My Mariners lost Game 6, but there were a lot of points in Week 7. Jordan Addison caught a bunch of balls. Sean tells me before the show it's maybe time to revisit the Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown discussion. Told me it was a weird time for that because A.J. Brown had 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Devonta Smith was incredible. A lot of 30-point games, even though they weren't great football games. Teams scoring points, touchdowns, yards were out there. All that and more is what we're talking about today on Stealing Bananas. As we recap Week 7, I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter, bengretch.subsite.com. With me, as always, is Shawn Siegele. You can find all of his great work over at RotoViz. And Sean, last we talked to the people, I was riding high off a Game 2 win against the Blue Jays. The playoffs go so fast. It's just been 1 week since we hopped on here. I went to 3 playoff baseball games. My team lost 2 of them. They just lost again today. Heading for a Game 7 tomorrow. When people listen to this, they'll be...
I was really worried about you. They're in Game 5. Like, if Ben goes to 3, Seattle Mariners losses, it's going to be dark. They trail in the 8th, but then Eugenio Suarez, former Diamondbacks carrying you guys right now, hits a grand slam. That's pretty fun. Not too many chances to go see your guys hit grand slams in Game 5 of the ALCS.
That was quite fun. Cal Raleigh right before that hit a homer to tie it. The pitch that he hit the homer, I called exactly Edgar's Cantina. There's like an upper and a lower level. I'm like, he's going to hit one in the lower level right in front of the scoreboard. It's crazy. This is exactly where he hit it. It's not a particularly large area, but I mean, it is obviously down the left field line, and he was hitting righty. Like it was a educated guess. Very next pitch, he hit a ball into the exact spot. That was pretty fun. Anyway, we're talking football today. I can either be depressed or excited tomorrow about my team either losing or winning and going to the World Series. Game 7's tomorrow. I don't want to think about that at all. I guess what I will say about it, I just said I don't want to think about it, but what I will say about it is I have never experienced this as an adult because I was 14 the last time the Mariners made the ALCS 24 years ago. The amount of swings in playoff baseball games, and baseball's every day, and you know that. Obviously, I understand that. I've watched the sport my whole life, and I've loved it. But in the regular season, when you lose one game, it's like, oh, there's a game tomorrow. But in the postseason, every game is so massive, and then there is still a game tomorrow. I don't have time to recover. And we went through the first series, and it went all 5 games, and there was multiple come from behind games. There was multiple extra inning games. The 5th game was a 15-inning game. There have been multiple, come from behind games. In this series, it's going to go 7 games. I no longer can analyze any of it. I'm just purely working off vibes. We're not even at the World Series. I mean, it potentially could be a whole nother series behind this. I don't know how people survive with like playoff. I'm ready to go 24 more years not having to deal with this. This is what I'm saying. It's been insane.
But the Dodgers will tell you there aren't swings in playoff baseball. Just get yourself a $1 trillion team. You'll be all right.
Just dominate every team every night. Yeah. Spoken like a Diamondbacks fan. That is not a big fan of what the Dodgers have been able to do. Well, they'll also tell you that they are ruining baseball, which their head coach said in their NLCS. He said that the people say the Dodgers ruined baseball. I say let's go win 4 more and ruin baseball even more or something. And I was like, that's kind of a weird message.
It's probably a weird rallying cry.
It's a weird message, I think. At any rate, a fun Week 7. Let's start with the Eagles. You mentioned the Eagles-Vikings. You mentioned the Davonta Smith thing. And obviously Jordan Addison, 12 targets, 9 catches, 128 yards. Not like, overshadowing Justin Jefferson as much as, to me, it felt like they must have been rolling coverage toward Justin Jefferson. He still gets 10 targets. He has 5 catches, 79 yards. It's a really nice play on a play where he's just the outlet receiver and winds up going to him, and he just speeds past the defender up the sideline and ends up going for a huge gain on what was just a dump off. And you're like, oh, yeah, this guy's like incredibly athletic. That's why he's so good at route running.
Play right there I think underlines the difference between like a Justin Jefferson and Marvin Harrison, even when he's good. Now, I don't know what we'll get to later. Today, even though the box score doesn't show much, was one of the first days where I thought that Marvin Harrison was really doing things for the Cardinals, opening things up for other guys. And he looked dynamic vertically, right? And you could see a little bit of that college prospect profile element to it. I mean, the Cardinals are in a rough spot. I mean, they need to not go back to Kyler Murray, which is tough structurally for organization. But I mean, Jefferson, that ability to do all of those things that the vertical receivers do, and to do the yards after catch, the run after catch, which is something that showed up, all the way back in college. But he just, and you talk about how, I mean, Jordan Addison, obviously not better than Justin Jefferson, benefiting from the coverage. We watched the last, 2-3 years. I mean, Justin Jefferson is doing all of this through doubles and triple teams. And it's a big sign, I think, for them, even though Carson Wentz had an interesting day today because so many elements where you're like, thank goodness. I mean, 12 targets to Jordan Addison, and they were mostly high quality. Now, he did miss him on what probably would have been a short catch and run for a touchdown early, and that changed the game a little bit. But 10 to Jefferson, 9 to TJ Hawkinson. Ben, TJ Hawkinson, the invisible man this season, that has been a problem, arguably, for this Vikings offense. He had a lot of, if you want to call him first read, what have you, he had a lot of design plays for him today, and almost a sensational touchdown that was turned over probably accurately, but I mean, a phenomenal effort. If these three guys are involved, they're not going to lose too many games that their quarterbacks don't just give away. But we finally got some excitement from the Philadelphia Eagles on offense as well.
Yeah, Hawkinson nearly had the diving TD late that you mentioned. But my note was that he feels pretty clearly the number 3. I thought Addison's play, I mean, making so many plays downfield, he's so good playing the ball in the air. A couple of the throws weren't maybe perfect, but he makes them look fine because of the way, I mean, he's making not necessarily like full extension diving catches, but at times going to the ground. And you just see so many receivers who are just not capable of playing balls that are not well thrown to their chest. They're a little bit low or this or that. And Addison is one of these guys that gets his body into a spot where he's always comfortably catching it, like in the catch pocket or whatever, in his arms, in his hands, however he needs to catch it. And he makes tough plays look easy, which I always say is like this great trait for the best receivers that people just don't understand. Addison is so much better. You've been saying this for a really long time. You've gotten me on it for the last couple of years now, at least. He's so much better than most in the fantasy community understand. And it's very good for Justin Jefferson that he has this game. For anyone who's, kind of confused about, Addison's going to eat into Jefferson. No, he showed very clearly you cannot leave him in one-on-one. He's going to have 128 yards on 12 targets. You're going to have a problem. It doesn't even matter if the quarterback can throw every ball perfectly well. He'll go get it. He'll continue to win every single time. You mentioned the one miss. It was just one of those sprint outs into the flat, and Wentz just threw it way too flat for whatever reason. And you're right. I mean, like as you described it, Addison would have caught it and had so much room to run, potentially even a touchdown. Perfectly designed play call from Kevin O'Connell, who's obviously a huge asset here as well. But this is a really fun passing game with all these guys going. Addison now 3 games. We talked a little bit about it before the game, whether we were going to play him in some spots with, some good options and those things. We ended up kind of leaning toward playing him as much as we could because he only played 7 quarters and he had been really, really good in those 7 quarters. He got suspended for 1 quarter in that second game, comes out 4 more quarters here. He's not even played 3 full games for anyone who's paying attention to the fact that he got suspended for that 1 quarter. And all 3 games have been very good fantasy days, even though some of it happened late in those first 2 games. He got there. And one of the reasons the second game it was late is that he didn't play in the first quarter. That's why I keep saying that. It took a little while, but he wasn't playing for part of that. So, I mean, this guy's playing great football.
And he was the go-to guy in all of the key situations where they needed to move the ball. The combination for him, so he's not, I mean, everyone knows he's not big, right? He's not going to break a lot of tackles. He's not going to do a ton after the catch when there are guys on him. In so many ways, you have these similarities where these two teams are mirror images, right? Where Davonta Smith is that version for the Eagles. But the small guys here getting open absolutely at will. Every time that Jordan Addison cuts, I mean, he separates from his defender, by multiple feet. And having guys that wide open at the NFL level gives so much safety and confidence there for the QB, where you just have easy throws for first downs. Addison was doing it over and over throughout this game. And again, it's that ability to get open right off the line of scrimmage, but also the ability to run routes where you're separating way down the field. To be able to do it at all levels in the contemporary NFL is just a massive advantage for your quarterback in your offense.
And that's a thing that he only was early last year, or maybe back to the rookie year, was the downfield stuff. And he was hitting on that, and people all he can do is score these touchdowns. But it's because they weren't really asking a lot more of him. It was great to see, like you said, fourth down, they just run a quick speed out to Jordan Addison. Oh, we got him on one-on-one. They just kept running out patterns to him, and it's like they're doing it every single time. He's still creating 3 yards of separation every time. Every time they needed a play, they fourth and short, third and medium, just run an out pattern to Jordan Addison. We'll just convert and keep moving. It was ridiculous. You mentioned the Eagles side. Devonta Smith, 9 catches, 183 yards and a TD. AJ Brown, 4 for 121 and 2. I have criticized Sirianni and Patullo, the offensive coordinator, a ton in stealing signals. Maybe less so on the show, but maybe on the show a decent amount as well. Just because they're so weird about everything that they do. They were so run heavy. And then the 1 week they decide to pass, they have the highest pass rate over expected of any team in any game all year. They decided to be even more pass heavy than the Chargers' most extreme games, plus 18%. They just stop being so weird. Just run the ball a little bit to set up the pass. We all know you guys can run the ball. We're not saying you need to be plus 18% PROE and throw yourself out of a game and end up losing because of it. The last couple weeks, because I've said this so negatively about them, I do want to compliment them. They've looked better. This game they were good. They ran early. The Vikings are easier to beat through running the ball. They did establish the run a little bit. Barkley wasn't necessarily great. They go to the passing game, and then even in the passing game, they're not just spamming the same concepts. They were hitting Devonta underneath as the zone beater a bunch. This was what Rashee Rice was supposed to be. We'll get, I'm sure, to him tonight. But I mean, when I say he's supposed to be, it's probably what he will be. But Devonta Smith is just sitting in the middle of the field in front of the zone. And then after doing that several times, he catches several balls. He's finding space. He's converting first downs. They go over the top to Devonta Smith. And it's all right, now you run him on a deep ball. He beats the whole defense. He scores a 79-yard touchdown. He was I get what you're saying when you're excited about the way your guy performed. He was the focal point of the pass game. AJ Brown had the early TD, and then he had the late TD. Only had 4 catches on the game. The early TD was scramble drill, and he just took off downfield, and Jalen Hurts threw it up. The late one, a little bit more structured, but it was a little stop and go on a key down. Was it a 4th down or a 3rd down? But they went deep to him, and he had another big play. He could burn people at will, but Devonta Smith throughout the middle of the game was the guy that Hurts was going to a ton. These guys combined for 13 of 19 of Hurts's 19 completions and over 300 yards of his 326 yards.
They're so good. I mean, it's kind of hard to compliment them, actually, or honestly, or however you want to say it, right? Because they really tried to get the run going. But I have absolutely no idea what is going on with Saquon Barkley, because, I mean, this is the Giants version where there's not really a lot of places to go. And so maybe that's just the only difference. Doesn't have as much room to run in. But for someone who was 2 automatic 60-yard runs a game last year, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but not much, right? I mean, we talked all offseason about the impact of the long runs. There's just nothing there. I mean, 18 for 44 in this game. And they put themselves in a position where, as poorly as Carson Wentz played in the first half, because most of his big gaffes took place in the first half, they didn't put the Vikings away. And they were forced into throwing these passes to those 2 superstars in a way that you shouldn't have to be. I mean, this is a perfect passer rating game where, again, so much of it comes where Hurts is just out there, playing the sandlot ball like a Russell Wilson. And I understand, and this is kind of the thing, even when Justin Fields plays well, right? Where people are like, you can't run an offense, and so he plays well, he doesn't play well. It's still problematic for anyone who wants to practice during the week or like call plays during the game, because all of that becomes more or less irrelevant. But you just have to throw it more and let these guys have a chance. That first sort of scramble drill, throw the ball up to AJ Brown. You're seeing like the immense physicality of AJ Brown. On the touchdown, when he catches it in a little bit of traffic, it was like he had superpowers where he catches it, and then the 3 Minnesota Vikings closest to him get like hit by some blast of superpower where suddenly they're 5 feet further away than they were when he caught the ball and he walks in. But then you see a little bit more like normal AJ Brown. We're on the key play late in the game. The defender is like 15 yards off of him on 3rd and long. And he beats the guy long. He beats that defender over the top so easily. He runs at him, slows for a second. The defender's like, I got to get up here and stop this play.
Because if he catches it, I'm not going to be able to tackle him.
Right, exactly. It's like one-on-one, this guy is going to be a big problem. And then A.J. Brown just turns it back on, runs by him. Hurts just lobs the ball over the top. Brown catches it, goes down, game over. So, yeah, just 4 catches for A.J. Brown, but 3 of them were absolutely massive game-winning, game-turning plays. Obviously, A.J. Brown can still play. But Davonta Smith, anytime he gets the chance, showing the guy who was 200 yards in the first half of the national championship game, Mac Jones, has been showing a little bit of that this season as well. It's great for these guys to be able to get the go. But, Smith doesn't necessarily have Addison's speed, but the smoothness in and out of his breaks. He's not going to be one of these guys who like shocks you with the physicality or the amazing hands at the catch point, but there's a smoothness at the point of the catch, and then that ability to get over the top too and make those plays. There was a moment where I was sort of freaking out where I did think he was going to let his legs get caught on that 79-yard touchdown, as Chris Olave did today. But then, and we don't know if this would have happened for Devonta Smith as well, but Olave gets in a couple plays later, so that one was all right. We got some deep passes to our guys today, and having the NFL feature more of these long throws again, and having the scoring that you talked about in the open, win or lose, it's making fantasy football a lot of fun right now.
It's a lot more fun. I'm just glad that Devonta Smith has that 200-yard half in the national championship back in 2020 to hang his hat on, because A.J. Brown being better than him all 5 of his NFL seasons would look worse if he didn't have that 6 years ago for you to continue to bring up. But he did
it made an impression on me.
It made an impression. He did do incredibly well today. Dallas Goedert a little bit quieter. The rest of the team, 3 catches. That's the way it'll go. The 3 different running backs have 1 catch. Barkley, Shipley, Bigsby. Barkley's line, he's been doing okay despite the rushing efficiency because of a lot of receiving. He gets 1 catch for -2 yards in a game where he only runs for 44. It's obviously pretty problematic. You mentioned like you don't know what's going on with him. The running back stuff is fascinating. For years, we always talked about how the number 1 running back, back before like fantasy football research became so advanced and next level, and it was just sort of pattern matching. Everyone would be like, well, the number 1 running back is never the number 1 the next year. Like, it didn't happen for a ton of years after whoever, like LaDainian Tomlinson was the last one. And it was 8 or 10.
LT would tell you the number 1 running back is always the number 1 running back.
He was always the number 1, but it was multiple years in a row that, one guy, then another guy, then another guy. And I just, it's fascinating to me to think about how well Jonathan Taylor is doing in conjunction with how poorly Barkley looks, and the fact that they're probably just basically the same player. And they had very different seasons in 2024 and very different seasons in 2025. And what that means for like how marginal and how fractional it is to get the absolute maximum out of your physical ability. Barkley signed, we talk about like the contract year stuff and all that, but like Barkley signed that offseason, had so much to prove. I imagine worked his absolute butt off all offseason, was in the best shape of his life. Literally came into last year in peak physical condition and had the best year of his career, and just couldn't do that this offseason after 500 touches through February. We talked about this. Like, Heats has talked about it. He needed more time to recover because he was carrying massive workloads through February. He had over 100 playoff touches in 4 games, over 25 touches per game. We talked about this a little in the offseason, whether that leads to more injuries or this or that or whatever. But the fact that he maybe just doesn't have quite as much of a spark or a burst, I mean, it does feel like it has something to do with that. And then the other guy I would point to here in this conversation as I think about it is Derrick Henry, who, has been struggling a little bit this year, but for most of his career was able to maintain the big play stuff and is just known for the ridiculous workout stuff. Every offseason they would talk about these crazy, and just how well he takes care of his body and all of these things. I just think it's probably really, really hard to maintain that 100th percentile or 99th percentile peak physical fitness. And if you're like 95th percentile, even if you're the best running back in the league, it's hard to be good enough to differentiate at a position that we know that there's a lot of there's a lot of really good players. And sometimes it's not that these players aren't good when people talk about running backs don't matter or those types of concepts that have existed in the past, but it's hard to differentiate from other elite athletes unless you're really on another level. I don't know. I just think it's a fascinating thing this season with the way Taylor and Barkley have gone different directions.
And the other element there is tactics and how teams continue to evolve on both sides of the ball. But certainly in the offseason, you have a lot of these defensive coordinators, you have head coaches working with them, you have the entire defensive staff, you got the entire organization trying to answer this question of how do you stop the Super Bowl champions and at least make them one-dimensional, right? Make Jalen Hurts carry them, make him have a perfect passer rating game like he did today where they barely beat the Minnesota Vikings.
That's a great point.
Make the Ravens one-dimensional. Like, we know that Lamar Jackson had one of the greatest all-time seasons, even as a passer last season, but you have to make him do that when Derrick Henry isn't also gashing you. You've got to make some of these teams go to secondary pieces. And we've even gotten a little bit of that with the Buffalo Bills where, granted, the Bills defense is still terrible, but so much of what they're dealing with is that they didn't make the decision to surround Josh Allen with a bunch of stars, and teams have figured out how to neutralize some of what he does as well, especially if he's not going to get the teammate help that some of these other players get.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think Hurts was always a little bit of, I feel like Hurts has regressed a little bit. It's, a weird discussion to have on a day where, as you said, he had a perfect passer rating, but he had a perfect passer rating, to be clear, on 23 pass attempts. He did take 3 sacks. He ran out of bounds, a couple yards behind the line of scrimmage. He had 4 carries for -10 yards. I guess there's probably some kneel downs there, but obviously sacks don't count as negative rushing plays. So to have 4 carries for -10 yards for Hurts means they were design carries or what have you. And he either runs out of bounds. His long was 1 yard. I guess that would have been a tush push. I can't remember all 4 of his carries. I don't know how he ended up with -10 yards rushing. Anyway.
Well, in terms of, again, people trying different wrinkles, we got the Vikings having someone kneel down horizontally to the line of scrimmage.
That was cool. Yeah. Lay down.
So, yeah.
For the tush push defense. Yeah. Just laying in front of the center. That was hilarious. I thought you were going to say, when I was talking about the negative rushing yards, Carson Wentz's strategy of throwing a backward pass out of bounds, because I believe that would go for negative lateral yards.
It's interesting, like, how much horizontal football there is now, that the quarterbacks during these plays. Now, granted, a few of these, like Isaiah Pacheco has been scapegoated for, like, definitely doing the wrong thing. But when you have guys like Patrick Mahomes throwing, like, clear-cut just backward fumbles on plays that you're like, you got to do something else. It's not surprising that Carson Wentz, Carson Wentz made a bunch of great throws in this game. I hope that you get the big like switch flips on for JJ McCarthy in the second half of the season. That's going to be necessary for all of our interesting guys here to stay fun. But Carson Wentz, even with a lot of really nice plays in this game, there are like 10 plays where he's so sped up that like anything could have happened on those 10 plays.
It's
and
so
one
funny.
of the things that happened were some crazy backward passes.
Backward pass, pick six, threw another interception, the miss on to Addison on a simple sprint out. Those are all the ones that I had in my little bullet point here that said Wentz is a mess early. And then I wrote a couple other mistakes. I was like, I've run out of, as I was making this note, I've run out of remembering all of the things that he did. But as you said, beyond those like massive negative plays, he had a lot of really good throws and mostly played the quarterback position well on like 80% of the snaps. And then 20% of the snaps, you're like, oh yeah, this is Carson Wentz. There he is. That's that guy. I know that guy.
And Jacoby Brissett played a very much a rich man's version of that, but there was a little bit of that from him as well. I mean, these older QBs who have more or less failed as starters get their chances, especially sometimes get their chances with some interesting teams, right? Carson Wentz surrounded by absolute superstars, Jacoby Brissett getting to throw to guys like Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. I mean, it's been fun to watch all of these reclamation projects at QB and really getting shockingly positive results. Jacoby Brissett kept like barely missing his guys. At one point, Trey McBride, before he went off for the multiple touchdowns, was starting to get a little bit frustrated because he was getting wide open and Brissett kept missing him by just enough to kill the play. But does he now have like 50% more touchdowns in the last two games with Jacoby Brissett than like the last 23 with Kyler Murray?
Yeah. Yep. I think the math's right on that. I think that's about exactly correct. I mean, it's probably not exactly correct, but he's got 3 touchdowns. And if you want to really, we talked about it last week, he probably scored on the one, got driven back out of the end zone, and then scored on the next play. Probably has caught 4 touchdowns. Obviously, he wouldn't have caught 2 on the same drive, but Brissett has been able to get him the ball in spaces for him to score touchdowns, and it's been so bizarre why this guy who is an absolute physical freak is able to make the ridiculous plays on the ball. One of the really fun things about Trey McBride, if you go through projections and those things, is to see that this guy has like a 76% catch rate every year, like clockwork. Like that's an absurd number. I know he has a low ADOT, but like doesn't drop passes. It's the reason guys don't have that high of a catch rate is you can't have 100% like perfectly on target passes. So there's balls in different areas and things. He goes and gets the ball wherever it is. He'll catch it no matter what, which feels like a good red zone trait. And then also when the ball's in his hand, he's like impossible to bring down. He's like very fearless and an incredible yard after the catch guy. His second TD today, Brissett gets him into some space short of the goal line. And he's just like, you're not going to stop me from getting in the end zone. How has Kyler Murray never been able to get him into any of these spaces with the ball? It's absurd. He'll catch anything, and he'll run over anyone.
Well, you're talking about the catch rate. He was 10 for 13 in this game. 2 of the misses were on what would have been a long touchdown, but the ball was underthrown by like 3 yards. So instead of just running under it for an easy score, he had to go back to it, jumped. Defender made a spectacular play, knocking away from his hands as they were both up in the air. Another one, a few plays later, he sits down perfectly in the zone, and Brissett throws it 2 yards to his right. So, I mean, open on both of those plays as well. You need these guys who are going to get targets, but they're real targets, where the guy is open, he is separated, he's then going to catch, he's then going to run after the catch. Then if every single time we drafted Brock Bowers, we had drafted Trey McBride, we would be in pretty good shape. I mentioned that Marvin Harrison, I thought, looked pretty decent in this game. I do have to mention as well that he caught only 2 of his 6 targets for 58 yards. That vertical component, though, it did jump out. They lose this game. Brissett takes 6 sacks. He was under heavy pressure the whole time. Now, I'm certainly not saying that he played as well as Dak Prescott, that he's as good as Dak Prescott. The Cardinals offense, obviously not anywhere near the Dallas Cowboys offense. But you watch these two games back to back, which I happen to do. And on one of them, Brissett is just swamped, right? I mean, he's got four guys. He's got two guys in his face on the right, two guys in his face on the left. The pocket is collapsing. He's having to use his height and strength to, get that ball out over the top every single play. Micah Parsons, obviously, a ton of impact again in this one. You contrast that with Dak Prescott sitting back there throwing against air and throwing beautiful passes against air. But it does matter to these quarterbacks how much defensive penetration there is. And certainly if it's at every spot along the line of scrimmage, it's going to be tricky. I mean, he was fantastic in this game, especially when you adjust for or just consider all of the pressure that he faced. The Packers defense had been struggling a bit. They made just enough plays to win this one. The Cardinals should have won this game. The final line doesn't look that bad, but the play calling from Matt LaFleur, it seems designed to just kill the game. Certainly there's the question of anytime that you talk about a coach having one of his players on his fantasy team, I mean, obviously those kinds of things are silly and it's just because you're frustrated with what's happening. But I mean, we're to the point where, especially coming into this game with Josh Jacobs being injured, Matt LaFleur really just calls these games as though his only goal is to get Josh Jacobs touchdowns.
Did he make a joke that he has him on his fantasy team?
I mean, the entire offensive game plan for the week is a joke about Josh Jacobs being his fantasy team.
Got it. I thought there was a real football fun element here where, I mean, fun if you're not a Cardinals fan, because Jonathan Gannon keeps finding some really creative ways to lose games, and the Cardinals continue to find creative ways to lose games. It's not really necessarily to put it all on Jonathan Gannon, but the Packers late go out and win this game by playing to win. It seems pretty straightforward. Often isn't, as we know. We talk about this a lot, not so much this year.
Well, do you feel like they got the call down from the booth where the analytics person is saying, no, I mean, you can't kick that field goal there that you're lined up for. We're going to stop it here. You're going to think about it and explain to you why you have to go. And then they did, and they won.
I mean, maybe that's the way it went. Well, whatever it is, with just over 2.5 minutes remaining, they're down 3 points. They're in pretty comfortable field goal range, just inside the 30-yard line. And instead of leaving everything on your kicker I say comfortable field goal range, but it's a 46, 47, whatever, 48-yard field goal. Instead of leaving it all on your kicker to make that kick for a tie, and kickers miss those.
We're so used to these 55, 60-yard field goals at this point, but every week a lot of extra points are being missed. These field goals are longer than extra points.
Yeah, exactly. We're definitely seeing kickers miss plenty of kicks. Rather than leave that for the tie, they said we're going to go for it on 4th and 2. They convert it with an aggressive downfield pass. They go on to score the go-ahead touchdown. They hold on the way back. The Cardinals still had a chance to win it, but that's the point. The Cardinals are going to have a possession. If you kick the field goal there, you're leaving them just enough time to go down and beat you with a game-winning field goal. And I believe the Cardinals got into field goal range. They did move the ball on that last drive. So, again, if the Packers would have settled for a field goal there, they probably would have wound up losing on the other end if the Cardinals could have converted their field goal. Instead, they play for the win. They go down, they score the touchdown. They go up 27-23 instead of just tying it at 23, which also – put them up by 4. It made it so the Cardinals had to get a TD coming back with just about 2 minutes remaining. I just loved that. I mentioned the Jonathan Gannon thing. I guess the part of it where I would criticize Gannon a little bit is right before half, the Cardinals score a touchdown. They have 7 seconds left. I don't know why every team keeps doing this. They think when there's like a little bit of time left, what they should do is just boot it to the end zone to not risk a good return. The return takes time. You boot it in the end zone, they get it at the 35-yard line now, and no time is run off the clock. It's like kicking it out of bounds. It's 5 yards away from kicking it out of bounds back in the day when the 20-yard line used to be the touchback zone. And every broadcast ever would be like, oh, my God, that's a major mistake. You can't give them the ball at the 40-yard line with this little amount of time. We finally saw this happen, but we've talked so much about how special teams and leading to these good starting field positions can impact the game. The Packers steal a massive field goal before halftime in this game. There is only 7 seconds when the Cardinals score before half, but they kick it in the end zone. They don't run any time. Packers are like, all right, we're at the 35. We'll try to run a play. 7 seconds, we'll throw it over the middle of the field. From the 35, we'll gain about 20 yards and get across the 50. Get down in 6 seconds, call our timeout, kick a 60-yarder, as you said. These kickers can make 60-yarders. That's all they did. They completed a 20-yarder over the middle of the field, called a timeout, and kicked a 60-yarder. One play, 7 seconds. It was a
massive momentum swing.
It was huge.
Because the Cardinals had just run a great possession, scored a touchdown, pushed it to 2 possessions. You're up 13-3. You have dominated a pretty good Green Bay Packers team and made the Packers game plan look awful. And then you give up a 60-yard field goal that there's just no excuse for.
And all you have to do is kick the ball into the landing zone. Let them field it and return it and tackle. Maybe they do get a good return, but it will run enough clock. Even if they get a good return, as long as they don't score, they're going to run the 7 seconds. Or if they don't play it or whatever, it rolls in, then their touchback is at the 20. You don't just boot it into the end zone. What is the strategy there? Booting it into the end zone. It's crazy.
Yeah. There were several losses today that felt like they could only happen to specific coaching staffs, which I mean, it's kind of a bummer because I mean, I would have liked for the Cardinals to have won today. I would have liked for the New York Giants to have won. Certainly the Giants players deserved to win. And
I wanted to, that's a good one to go to. Sorry to finish your point. Sorry.
No, this was a good game though, right? I've given Matt LaFleur a bit of a hard time. The Packers are good. I mean, this would have been a big loss for them. I really do wonder what they're going to do when they have Christian Watson. It seems like they're going to have Jaden Reed late in the season. It's like you're not even using Matthew Golden, who it probably isn't ready to have a big role. But, man, every time he touches the ball, you're like, yeah, that guy's shot out of a cannon, which, again, I mean, you run in the 4.2s. That's how you should look. But some of the guys don't look game fast or game comfortable. He looks very dynamic. He's not even in the game plan. Now, he was in the first 10 plays, the scripted part, and then they're like, we're going to do something else. But the other thing that they did kind of do, and this is, again, the question of how are they going to use all these guys? Will they ever be more aggressive? Will they get, Jordan Love more passing attempts? Because we've talked so much about Trey McBride on the other sideline. I mean, Tucker Kraft he's not the same level of athlete, but he's also making these dynamic plays. When he catches the ball, you don't want to get in Tucker Kraft's way, which he's also demonstrating when he doesn't have the ball, opening up holes for the backs. Tucker Kraft, a big-time football player. He is out there impacting the game on every snap.
Yeah, he looks sweet. I had in my notes that they were using Golden early. I just looked as you were saying that. Like you said, 3 catches on the first drive. I mean, that was how I remembered it as well. I'm surprised to see he only had 4 in the game because when you were saying he wasn't in the game plan, that was actually the thing that I thought I saw was well, they came out wanting to get the ball in Golden's hands. And then they just
did it. Worked.
Yeah, and it worked. And then they're just well, I guess we checked that box. One more catch the rest of the game after that first drive. And
no incomplete targets to him. It's not like things went wrong when they tried to use it later.
Very bizarre. Kraft was solid, and then they were just we're going to throw to Romeo Doubs every time, which I can't complain about. 8 targets, 6 catches, 72 yards. Doubs looked good, fine. I mean, when they needed to get the ball down the field, they got it to Doubs, and it was effective. So, is what it is there. But I don't understand how they're not using Golden more at this point. He looks fine. He looks good. I mean, I wasn't in on Golden very much, but for people who drafted Golden, I would be, much more than I did. I would be furious. I'd be like, dude, what are you doing?
Colin and I have him on a team that weirdly didn't score a ton and win early, but the team itself is like a Jamar Chase, Jonathan Taylor team that has lots of other good players. It's an unbelievable team. So we need to claw back some points. And every week our last decision spot is Matthew Golden. And anybody who doesn't listen to OT, we'd love to have you, but also Colin is a huge Green Bay Packers fan. And so, and I was always yeah, I mean, I think this could be the week he goes off, and Colin always wants to play him. I think we always do play him. I watch the games. I'm like, yeah, he should. It's going to happen. It's going to be 150 here. We're going to be off to the races. He's going to be in the lineup every week. And then you're like, nope, it's not. They're not going to pass it all. But when they do, it's going to be Romeo Doubs. So, yeah, the Packers seem like a team that has the talent to win the Super Bowl, or the coaching staff is like, our goal is to get the last wild card spot and be competitive in a wild card weekend loss. That's probably a pretty uncharitable and unfair characterization of it, but that's how it feels when you watch them play.
No, I don't think it's that uncharitable, honestly. I mean, this defense should be way better. They tied the Cowboys a couple weeks ago, and it was pretty absurd. They beat the Bengals in a closer game than it should have been, when the Bengals were starting Joe Flacco like 4 days after trading for him. That game was 10-7 through 3 quarters. And this is the way they're playing every week. That's what they're doing. I mean, they should have lost this game probably if the Cardinals don't give them this free field goal before half, and maybe execute a little bit better down the stretch, or maybe just come back and score on their own on that final drive, which they did. You know, they did get into a position where that was possible. The Packers defense obviously is very good, but what did they get? They got down to the
Ray
27.
Jones catches the Hail Mary 3 yards out the back of the end zone, which he wasn't a spot to catch the ricochet. Not an illegal spot, unfortunately.
Well, so they got to the 26, and then Brissett took a sack, and then they completed a pass back up to the 27, and then ended up throwing those last two kind of just Hail Marys from the 27. But they had gotten up to the 26 with a little more than 30 seconds left if they didn't take a sack there and instead moved the ball further up. I thought that was silly. They completed a pass with 55 seconds. They had, I believe, 2 timeouts remaining. They did, and they let the clock run. And then they snapped it with 32 seconds and ended up taking a sack. It wasn't just that they let the clock run down to 32 seconds, which was dumb because it was 1st and 10. And, you know, even if you complete another pass or what have you, I mean, if you're running the clock down to 32 seconds and you're still at the 26-yard line and you have 2 timeouts, like, when are you going to use these timeouts? But the other part of it was like they didn't get really set up as quickly.
Yeah, because you're hurrying, then you give the advantage back to the elite pass.
And then Michael Parsons just
with the whole game.
Yeah, he just runs right around the side and gets to, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what happens when you're like not really breaking the huddle and getting set up and being like, oh, we need to have a chip on this guy. He'll just beat you and then sack the quarterback immediately. And now you're just using your timeout with less time and 9 yards further back. It was great plan. Anyway, they should have called a timeout after that first down. One of 2 games I want to go to. You mentioned Dart. I want to talk to you about Dart. Also, you were talking about Golden, and it made me realize that I have Golden on my team with Pat and Pete. And it was funny because you ended up with Olave on your team with Pat and Pete. I remember you said to me on the show, you kind of wish that Olave would have been there, or maybe off the show, that Olave would have been the pick the night after, because you and I drafted with those guys back-to-back nights, and then he could have wound up on my team because I was kind of more in the Olave boat. We got a pretty big Olave game here. I'm now also wishing that team had Olave and not Matthew Golden, because Olave, he looked good. He had that long catch you said where he got caught, but he wound up with 2 touchdowns anyway. I guess there's not much more to add than Olave had 2 touchdowns, but Juwan Johnson looked good. I want to talk about that Jaxon Dart game because I thought he looked good again, but he missed some throws. They're up 10, 5 minutes remaining in the 4th quarter, and he just throws it to a linebacker. I mean, that was rough. We talked about it a little bit. We were joking a little bit last week, whether he's, already a superstar or not. Obviously is a young quarterback that's developing very quickly and has done a lot very right. Played very well in this game again. I'm curious if this game improved your opinion of Dart, kept it the same, or brought it back just a little bit.
And this is a game against a Broncos defense that does actually seem susceptible to really good offenses, but they've got great metrics. Lots of good players. Going to be very aggressive. They do get the 4 sacks that you mentioned. The stats from this game are crazy because when you're talking about Jaxon Dart in still one of his first starts of his NFL career, facing this defense and doing it without any help. Right? Wan'Dale Robinson, Wan'Dale is probably pretty decent. And the fact that he's finally getting to run down the field is fantastic for him. It's fantastic for just football in general. It feels like him only catching 0-yard passes was an insult to like the aesthetics of the sport. 12 targets in this one, 6 catches to 95 yards. Jaxson Dart managed to create a game in which Daniel Bellinger was 3 for 88 with a touchdown. Theo Johnson was 3 for 66 with a touchdown. He completed only 15 of his 33 attempts and yet averaged 8.6 yards per attempt. Now, Ben, one of the things that happened in this game was that after 3 somewhat boring quarters, it really picked up. The numbers are juiced a little bit by this game having 2 deflection passing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. One to get like Bo Nix off 0 and rescue him from one of it was a full team meltdown to where Sean Payton really likes to call these short drop or pistol. I mean, Bo Nix throws a lot of passes from not very far behind the offensive line, whether it's under center or in the pistol or whatever you want to call it. He doesn't bend his knees, which is super weird. And then he throws about half of them into the defensive lineman's hands. The other half of them are just flat out dropped. Yeah, I mean, if you had the entire Denver Broncos receiving core play with their hands, one hand at least, if not both hands tied behind their backs, you would have gotten the exact same results through 3 quarters. And then you get this magical deflection touchdown for Troy Franklin that gets the Broncos going. A little bit later, we get a much more sensational deflection touchdown for Theo Johnson, where he ends up going 41 yards for the score. So there were some not very likely to be repeated passing touchdowns in this game, but it doesn't take away from how dynamically Jaxson Dart, I don't necessarily say move the ball, because obviously there were a lot of sacks, there was a lot of punting. You had herky-jerky play from both teams. But, I mean, he threw for 283 yards. He throws 3 touchdown passes. And there's absolutely no way the Giants lose this game if they don't do very New York Giants things, really all throughout, but certainly at the end.
Okay, but you've been hard on Brian Daboll, and I'm going to keep up for Brian Daboll a little bit here. You said Jaxson Dart somehow created these lines. Daniel Bellinger's 44-yard TD was 100% play design. They rolled him on a wheel route. They obviously had something that they saw that Denver was not paying attention to the blocking tight end. He just got completely forgotten about, and Dart extended the play and looked around. When he finally threw it to Bellinger, Bellinger's like, I've been standing back here for 20 minutes. I'm just waiting for the ball. And he gets like a 44-yard TD. They go back to that like a possession later and get another 20-something yard catch, which is how Bellinger ends up with a 3 for 88 yard day. They went downfield to him twice. He had Bellinger wide open a third time and missed him. That would have been down into the 5-yard line. This time it was on like a little bit of a flag route. Why the F open again? I mean, just they were getting Daniel Bellinger wide open downfield every time. That's coaching. I mean, that was something that they saw on film, I think, pretty clearly. The Theo Johnson line, 3 for 66 and 1, was a 41-yard TD that you just set off a deflection. It's a slant pattern to Wan'Dale Robinson. It bounces off his hands. It's like a 7-yard slant. It's more on Wan'Dale that he dropped it, but Theo Johnson just happens to catch it and run for 41 yards at a touchdown. So his 2 long touchdowns in this game were an absurd deflection that he didn't even throw to the player. And one where the other tight end was just left behind the defense wide open. So we can't give too much credit to him for the yards per attempt here and the extreme passing efficiency. I do think it's awesome that he continues to keep putting up numbers. The rushing TD late was great. 3 touchdowns passing, a rushing TD. He did find Bellinger on that play. He did deliver a really good ball for the long touchdown. I mean, he's obviously good. He's obviously doing a lot really, really right. But I thought this was such a funny game because he had this really great stat line, but I still felt like I don't think he's like an immediate superstar. He's doing awesome things and he's putting up huge numbers, but like he's also, there's variance in football. There's wild stuff going on. And then that interception.
But the wild stuff tends to go in the favor of the rising stars.
Yes.
You talk about the things that Dable accomplished in this game. They also managed to call a draw play to Tyrone Tracy, where the Denver Broncos were looking for something else because their 11 defenders, like 6 of them sprinted one way, 5 of them sprinted the other. It was the easiest long touchdown run in NFL history. There was no one within like 10 yards of him when he ran across the line of scrimmage. Tracy, obviously with the elite speed, made that happen super easily. Also in this game, if you want to look at the two coaches, the Denver Broncos, they're a penalty machine. 12 for 127 in this one, only 36 penalty yards for the Giants. Their coach did not run on the field to protest an obvious pass interference penalty either. So, some other things in his column. And when you're talking about blaming the coaching staff for that? No, the Broncos committed a clear pass interference at the end of the game. Sean Payton didn't like. He runs out there. It's like, even if they decided to like pick up the flag, now you've got anyway. Some of the other nice plays by Dart and our guy Wandale. They kept the drive alive. There were so many twists and turns in this game where the Broncos take the lead. The Giants go down. They are done. They have a long, like 4th and 17 that Wandale gets by like a millimeter on a great effort at the end where, he should have been stopped even after he makes that catch. Obviously, Giants score, missed the extra point, multiple missed extra points. Probably can't blame Brian Dable for that. And then again, a situation where as we'll say questionably, because it was a kind of crazy fourth quarter, but as much as Bo Nix had struggled and his receivers had struggled to where I really thought they needed, I've been excited about various guys on this team. Obviously, Marvin Mims is mostly a gadget guy, but occasionally makes some plays.
Good. Yeah.
Cortland Sutton has been a pretty decent number 1 receiver throughout his career. Troy Franklin has his moments. Evan Ingram in the past has been pretty decent. He actually has a long catch and run toward the end. He had a catch and run earlier in the game, Ben, where I'm like, they might want to cut him in game. He looks that done. Through 3 quarters, they need to just replace their entire skill position group. Like all of these guys needed to be benched. They had no one who should have stayed out there, including Bo Nix. Bo Nix seemed like he was 1 possession away from finding the pine here. But then after the Giants missed that extra point, they do not play defense on the last couple of plays to let the Denver Broncos get an easy field goal range.
We do have to say something. One of the games we're not going to talk about is the London game. You said you're morally opposed to the London games to be before, which I thought was the funniest thing that I've heard. This is a team that played in London 7 days ago and flew all the way back to Denver, not just back to the East Coast, all the way back to Mountain Time Zone. I believe this is the longest time zone difference between 2 games played in 2 consecutive days since they've started doing the international series, because they used to always have a bye. Now they give the team the option. Denver, I guess, declined the bye. They get a home game coming off the London game. But like the way I'm going to write it in Stealing Signals and the lead here, as you're talking about, they all looked horrible and they all looked done and they looked like what I'm going to write is the lead for this is that for most of the game, Denver felt like they were still in London. Like they looked like they were jet lagged is probably the fair way to they did look like everything you're saying, but we can maybe give them a little bit of slack based on the travel schedule and all of those things. And yet they score 0 points through 3 quarters and 33 points in the fourth quarter. 33. And the Giants, as you said, scored coming back to retake the lead. They actually got 13 points in the fourth quarter. There are 46 total points scored in the fourth quarter in a game that had a 39.5 over under. It was only at 19 through 3. People who had the under were thinking they were going to win that. It was 19-0. And then 46 points got dumped on their head in the fourth quarter. Crazy game. Crazy.
Yeah, and a game that was enough fun that we've been talking about it for 10, 15 minutes now. And only now will I mention that Scatterboo, again, was very fun. 94 yards from scrimmage, gets in the end zone. Doesn't have an incredibly efficient day, but does have numerous, pretty decent chunk gains. You can see how he was able to rack up the massive totals at Arizona State, because you can't do that by averaging 3 yards per carry and just getting, a billion carries. We were talking about Saquon Barkley and the 500 touches earlier in the show. It did seem like Quinshon Judkins was going to hit that just in today's game at one point along the way. That's not how Scatterboo is getting to these numbers. He does get swallowed up a bit late when they're trying to kill the clock, and obviously ineffectively. So that was unfortunate there. He looks good. As we mentioned, Tracy gets in the end zone. Even without receivers, this Giants team is going to move the ball. They're going to score points. It is a lot of fun for fantasy.
Yeah, it's super fun. Jaxon Dart's super good. I definitely don't want to come across like I am criticizing him or down on him. I'm trying to figure him out, because he's one of those forces that is clearly unique, and we know that the outliers are the really, really interesting players in the league and in fantasy and all of those things. I mean, you could tell me that Jaxon Dart should be considered like in the top 10 or top 5, maybe even as far as fantasy quarterbacks the rest of the way. And I don't know that I could strongly disagree with that in any kind of meaningful way. I mean, he's going to score points every week the way that he's playing until he hurts himself, which is probably inevitable as well. I don't know what to make of this guy.
But I've got a fun stat for you. Troy Franklin drew 10 targets today. Only caught 2 of them that weren't deflected touchdowns.
Troy Franklin had a rough go of it. He's kind of had a rough season to this point. Marvin Mims looked good, as you said. He had 6 for 85 on 7 targets. RJ Harvey, I'm bummed about him, but he did score a touchdown. But we're not getting, the usage, something's got to change there, because we're not getting any usage.
Well, J.K. Dobbins actually played pretty well in this game, but he was getting eliminated by the fact that Nixon, the receivers, could not keep any drives going. Harvey 4 carries for 0 yards. The thing that was too bad about him scoring the receiving touchdown, which scoring a receiving touchdown obviously is not too bad, his other target could also have been a receiving touchdown if he hadn't kind of just cut off that wheel route where he got behind the defense for a touchdown, and then instead of running under the ball, decided to stop and jump up and make the catch that way, which didn't work. So yeah. Hopefully we'll get more from him.
Yeah. 4 carries for 0 yards. He had more than 1 catch, but these swing passes are getting graded as carries, and he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage on some of these swing passes. That's why he doesn't. These
run the play correctly. Stop throwing the ball backward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only a matter of time until this is a scoop and score.
Right. He had at least one where he caught it on a swing pass and got swallowed up immediately, and it really wasn't on him. There's nothing he could do, and that's going to look weird for like his yards per carry stats and his success rate and all these things that people like to look at. And it's like all he did was swing out and catch a pass. That's what he's supposed to do. And before he get his head up field, he's tackled in the flat. Anyway, what game should we go to next? Oh, we got to talk about the Commanders and Cowboys probably. That was the big high over-under. Massive win for the Cowboys. A bummer to see Jaden Daniels leave early. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I was sure, was going to have a monster game against a bad Dallas run D. He does basically nothing. The whole offense looks, frankly, pretty poor throughout. But Dallas aside.
Before you go to Dallas' side, really quickly, Chris Rodriguez scores a rushing touchdown. Both he and Jordan Mason made nice efforts at the goal line today, and we got expedited review to change these incorrectly adjudicated plays where the coaches in the past probably wouldn't have challenged. Yeah. And replay just came in and said these guys got the ball. I mean, just barely, but they got the ball across the line. So nice to see replay used in an effective, accurate way and getting guys touchdowns, whether or not, those are the players you needed to have. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I'm surprised to see Pickens only went 4 for 82. I felt like Pickens had an awesome day today. Lamb 5 for 110 and a TD, has a 74-yard score in his return. Pickens made several really nice plays off of Lamb. Ferguson winds up with 2 TDs and leads the team with 7 catches. They go for 29 yards. It's all just checkdowns again. But Ferguson, I mean, nobody has liked anyone as much as Dak Prescott likes Jake Ferguson. But Pickens, he also drew a long DPI. He had a sweet over-the-shoulder catch. He was just hitting. It's a lot like the Addison and Jefferson conversation where it seemed like with Lamb back, you had to have Pickens hitting on one-on-one coverage on the other side of him. What I thought was interesting about this is Pickens looked way better than he did in the first couple games before Lamb went out. And we saw that when Lamb was out, Pickens and Dak developed a little bit of a rapport. Dak realized he could rely on him, those types of things. There's a timing that it gets developed there. Now you have Lamb back on the field. Coverage is rotating that way. You get the one-on-ones. Dak's going to them. He's hitting them. And, Pickens has a nice game in addition to Lamb's big game. The Cowboys passing attack looked awesome.
And we got a big run early from Javonte Williams that looked like peak Javonte Williams. So, Javonte Williams and Ramondre Stevenson are 2 players that are simply going to kill me every year. And it's not just fading them. When we're on them, they do not do well. But it's fun, especially with Javonte Williams here, to see him back and looking good. The Washington Commanders defense was so bad that they looked done kind of as a team. This was one where you don't have their star receivers out there for Jaden Daniels. You're to see his 12 for 22. Ben, I feel like I saw his first clearly bad pass ever in this game. I know he's thrown some incomplete passes, but he missed a wide open, I believe it was Zach Ertz, for a first down in the first half of this game. You just never see him throw inaccurate passes. So that was a little bit odd. But the 12 for 22 featured a ton of drops. This is the other game where if you're rooting for the QB in fantasy, it was just infuriating. Jalen Lane has some drops. He does go 3 for 60. Still an exciting young player. But when Chris Moore is your best receiver, he goes 2 for 59 in this game. It's kind of tough. Jaden Daniels was still going to have a good game. He had all of garbage time to look forward to when he goes out. So he's left a couple of games early now, and that play isn't working particularly well. I think even with him leaving early, even with the Commanders defense being terrible, if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you haven't had a ton. Even on some of the teams that made the playoffs and looked good going in, they still, and maybe this is just simply not being a fan. And for the fans, it's like this, whiplash effect where you feel like you've got a great team, then you get hammered in the playoffs. This team is not a great team. Their defense is terrible. And yet, the Dallas Cowboys, if they're not the most exciting offensive team in the NFL right now, they're in the top 3. And the weapons that they have to put George Pickens in there with CeeDee Lamb, like you were saying, effortlessly impactful game from Pickens in this one. Even a couple plays where it kind of felt like if the game were closer, or that if Pickens were one of these try-hard types of players where he could have gone for 150 as opposed to just drawing the pass interferences. But the stylish plays, no one is going to bring those out more than Pickens. You've got the running back. You've got that tight end who will catch and run a little bit for you if you need it. And it's going to be, they just completely flipped him into one of the best red zone threats. Every game out there right now for him feels like that playoff game that launched his ADP, not this year, but the previous year. They look really, really good. That offense is borderline unstoppable.
Yeah, it looks great. But as you were saying, one of my notes here was that for a game that was expected to have a ton of points and did, it was a little bit of a dud. Relative to that, there was, obviously Daniel's getting banged up isn't great. Their leading receiver is Lane with 60 yards and more, as you said, right behind him, 59 yards. No one else has more than 40 yards. They have 5 different guys with double-digit rushing, but, Jaden Daniels leads the team with 35 yards, 3 guys over 30. Dallas aside, you get the 116 yards from Javonte Williams on the ground. You get 110 from Lamb. You get 82 from Pickens. But then beyond that, Ferguson had 29 receiving yards. He's next. Jane Blue had 29 rushing. He looked fast. It was fun to see Blue He took a toss play that got called back to a hold around the end early on, and that was nice to see. They still, most of these carries came late in garbage time. They still just are giving him carries up the middle for the most part, but he did catch a pass. I mean, they got to do something creative with him to get his speed in the space, but they just bring him in like he's Miles Sanders and use him as the RB2 and just like give him handoffs right up the middle, which is just.
But I'm glad you brought it up because people have to have him. If you're playing in a more recreational league, a shallower league, even if you don't actually have the bench spots, if he is available in your league, you have to stash him over players who are actually scoring right now if you don't need them in your lineup in the next couple of weeks, because the impact he would have if Javonte Williams gets hurt. That play that got called back, I mean, you can see the 4.2 speed, just blazing speed there. And I mean, this is a team, this was their third game with 40 points. They didn't even win all three of them, but they have another game with 37. I mean, they're not playing a particularly difficult schedule, but they are scoring at will.
They are.
Yeah, and against the team that was good, right? The team that was good, they tied 40-40.
Yeah, and their defense is so bad that they're going to have to score in every game. I mean, just take the over in every game. This game had a 54 over-under and only had 3 points in the fourth quarter and still easily went over. I mean, that's 66 points in this game. They were over through 3 quarters. They were just going back and forth. Dallas isn't going to stop you. They're going to score on you. That's the Cowboys in every game is what it feels like right now. What are the games?
Rashee Rice. What were your thoughts there? The Chiefs took out Patrick Mahomes in the third quarter.
Yeah. The Chiefs today were the fully completed Death Star, taking out, showing the initial show of strength and destroying Alderaan, Princess Leia's planet, just to prove a point that they have, and the Raiders were that planet. The Raiders, I believe they finished with 3 first downs in this game. They did. They finished with 3 first downs. I heard on the broadcast, I was like, they've not moved the ball yet. They have not moved the ball yet. They have not moved the ball yet. They've done nothing. And I was waiting for this, and they put a graphic up with 2:30 left in the third quarter. It's already 31-0, which was the final score. And the graphic showed that the Raiders at that point had run 17 plays, almost the end of the third quarter, had 48 yards and 2 first downs. And so from that point forward, I was like, well, they didn't get a first down the next series. Well, okay, they got 1 on the one after that. Well, they didn't get 1 on the next series. I think they finished with 3 first downs. They did. And one of those was by penalty. 2 passing first downs, 1 by penalty. When they showed that graphic, 17 plays, the Chiefs at that point had run 61. The Raiders had 48 yards. The Chiefs at that point had 404. The Raiders had 2 first downs. The Chiefs at that point had 29. They finished with 30 first downs. The Raiders had 3. And my point is that because the Chiefs basically phoned it in the rest of the fourth quarter. They started kneeling. You never see this in the NFL. They started kneeling before they could run out on the clock and punted the ball back to the Raiders. And the Raiders ran an offensive play and then let the clock run out. But like they went into victory formation before the 2-minute warning. And then like it's not like the Raiders are calling their timeouts, but the reason teams don't do this is like then you have to punt because you don't have enough, it's got to be after the 2-minute warning to run the full final 2 minutes.
Frankly think teams should be doing that more. Right. We've got some games where there are risk of these players getting hurt when you're running plays, when you're out in multiple touchdowns.
Oh my
and
God.
all you have to do. But Ben, the
Raiders ran 30 plays.
30 plays. 30 plays. I mean, that might be an all-time record.
It's the lowest in several years because I read about this stuff in Stealing Signals and I write like, oh, that's the lowest of the year. Last year's low was not that low. It has to have been in the high 30s. Sometimes you'll see teams down around 40, 39, 38. I mean, I could go look it up right now on my old spreadsheets, but that 30 plays in a full football game.
Ben, the box score I'm looking at has the Chiefs with 30 first downs, which means that they had the same number of first downs as the Raiders ran plays.
The Chiefs ran 33 last year in week 18 when they got blown out when they were playing the backups. No other team was below 41 last year. the Raiders were trying. The Chiefs were not trying in that game. The game where they just let the Broncos beat them and shut them out.
I mean, partly here you're thinking, okay, this game, yeah, so it's a very definitive victory, but it's against a bad team. But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the Raiders won last week, right?
Yeah.
And they've also defeated in a game that is now quite a bit removed from where we are this week, but they've also defeated Drake Maye and the New England Patriots.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they only lost by 1 to the Bears, who look a little bit better at this point. Blocked field goal at the end of that game to preserve that win. They came in this game 2-4, and I mean, they didn't have a couple of their losses were pretty bad losses, but this the Chiefs. So anyway, let's talk about the Chiefs. They looked incredible.
So Rashee Rice, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 2 touchdowns. It's all kind of the manufactured-ish stuff that you kind of expect with Rashee Rice. On the other hand, he may have only been on the field for like 12 plays. He was not out there all the time. So to get 10 targets in that limited work and to score a couple times, you mentioned it's the full Death Star. The thing that I thought was just so striking was how Xavier Worthy's return had opened up everybody else. And suddenly you've got Hollywood Brown looking like a real receiver again, which is not what it looked like when he was being force-fed stuff. Then you add Rashee Rice in here today. And the other little note was that he ends up with a really bad line because he was playing with Carson. Ben, you were talking about the crazy thing the Chiefs did. Gardner Minshew played a full quarter of this game and is not in the passing box score.
Yeah.
So
he does have 3 carries for -3 yards because he started kneeling with 2:50 left.
He's definitely not the person you would want in a 50-team league where you had to play some bench QBs and you lost by less than a point. But Brashard Smith, in the non-garbage time portion of the game, caught 5 passes for 42 yards. That also looked like the Chiefs unlocked. I mean, this team looked like the 10,000 word article that I wrote about them that they had not remotely looked like through the first 5 weeks. And now the last couple, they look dramatically different.
That's exactly right. Xavier Worthy started to really open this stuff up for the last couple of weeks. Mahomes has been playing at a really high level. We've been saying that. The numbers haven't necessarily shown it yet. 286 and 3 in this game, runs for 28. And again, he was out of the game before the end of the third quarter. I mean, it was just as easy as he could make it. Every drive down, score a touchdown, until they just didn't want to do that anymore. I mean, like,
one of his passes was an actual no-look pass where he was staring directly down the field and threw a sideline completion to Rashee Rice. Now, he was feeling good enough about himself at this point that a couple plays later he threw what should have just been a clear-cut pick 6. Yep. But that one was dropped.
He did get bailed out on that. That was fascinating. But their drives to start the game, 9 plays, 92 yards, touchdown, 17 plays, 17. This is how the other team doesn't run any plays. You run 17 plays, 84 yards, touchdown, 16 plays, 94 yards, touchdown. They only ran 3 possessions in the first half, and the Raiders basically just punted 3 times and then got 1 play at the end of the half, and then it was halftime. Then they start the third quarter with an 11-play, 65-yard touchdown drive. 4 straight touchdown drives. We're just going to do whatever we want. They wind up settling for a field goal on the 5th one, mostly because they kind of just stopped trying at this point. I feel like they felt bad. It was the end of the third quarter already, and then they took out Mahomes. That was sort of that, and then they went to the we're going to kneel out the game stuff pretty shortly after that. So they wind up running 4 possessions through or in the fourth quarter, and it's all punts, and they had 1 turnover on downs where they just kind of run the ball, and they're like, can you guys do something on offense so we don't just keep getting the ball back, because we're just going to go 3 and out and punt it to you so you can try, because this is getting embarrassing for everyone involved. Unfortunately, the Raiders refused to do anything offensively. They put in Kenny Pickett, who immediately just dropped the ball and gave them the ball back. So that was cool. Just a 2-yard or 1 play, -2 yards, fumble, lost, back to the Chiefs. But no, Brashard Smith, to your point, saw a lot more of him. He looked great. I mean, I had him as a big time ad option, even if it's just like a contingent play, which you were sort of saying with Jaden Blue as well. I mean, those are both two guys that are really good ones to have right now. The offense is just so good. It may be tougher for him, even if Pacheco goes down, to score the way you were describing with Blue. I mean, I think the fact that they're willing to use Blue as a running back is a great sign, because they will just probably give him a ton of work if Javonte goes down. The Chiefs can do so many different things, but you described it so well. Xavier Worthy really started to open it up. Rashee Rice, obviously a massive key component. His insertion into the lineup. Worthy, I thought, looked quicker. He had that minor ankle issue, it appears, behind him. He got caught by a linebacker from behind last week. It was a little bit weird. And he looked quicker this week when they gave him the ball.
He looked fast around the edge when they ran their weekly running play to him. He would have had a touchdown, except he let the touchdown pass bounce off of his chest. Now, he did somehow miraculously still catch that ball and was very proud of himself, which all the fantasy managers were like, you just cost us a touchdown, catch it cleanly. But
I love when people are like, that's an amazing catch when a guy drops a ball but then recatches it. There was a college catch the other day where the guy juggled it and knocked it up over a defender, then tried to run into the defender, whiffed on the defender, tripped, fell, and then miraculously caught it. And it was like, this is the greatest catch I've ever seen. And I was like, this is completely self-inflicted. It was yakety sacks and he wound up catching it. Like, that's all it was. Anyway.
Yeah, they look good. There are going to be, I mean, if I'm too biased to probably do it accurately. If you had to do a real quick off the top of your head, maybe you don't even think of all the teams ranking of like the top 2 or 3 teams of football right now after just watching this week. And I mean, considering where they're at and what they have to do in order to get where they need to be, where would you have the teams at the top?
The best teams in football right now?
Yeah.
There's a lot of parity. It's tricky. The Chiefs would certainly be up there. I know they're only 4-3, but I think they would be, at the, if not the very top, very near the top. The Colts come to mind really quickly for me. The Packers, the Lions. I mean, obviously the Bills. You probably got to continue to give respect to the Eagles. Certainly, they're so talented. They seem to figure more stuff out today. That's like the top group for me. Maybe, I don't know. Who am I missing?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are going to be the leading contenders. The Colts, obviously, very, very interesting. The Lions, if they get to play at home, it's hard to. I mean, watching today, it's hard to believe they blew that NFC playoff game last year to the Commanders. But again, I mean, Jaden Daniels at that point healthy and how that offense was humming, they just never punted. You can't make mistakes in games like that. This Chiefs team, and again, it's a one-game situation against a team that is reeling, right? But when you consider where they are with the personnel on offense, and then where their defense is, I mean, this is a better team than the team that just went to 3 Super Bowls. Doesn't mean they'll go back because they were very lucky to go to 3 straight Super Bowls. But, I mean, it's a better team than those teams.
I just went and looked at the Super Bowl futures for any listeners who were wondering why we're speculating on this when there's an actual market out there and then they want to go look at it. The Chiefs are favored. They're plus 500. The Bills are second, plus 750. The Packers and Lions are plus 800 each. The Rams is a team that I did not name. They're 9-1, plus 900. Colts are 10-1. Eagles are 11-1, and then there's a pretty big gap, and it goes to the Bucs. So basically, the teams that I named, but I left the Rams out of that top tier. Behind the Bucs, you get the Broncos, you get the Niners, you get the Ravens. Still, then another little gap down to like the Seahawks, Patriots, some of those teams. But the Chiefs, despite being 4-3. And not leading their division. The Broncos did win today and moved to 5-2. The Chargers game, you and I, neither of us has finished that, but it wasn't looking good for him when we were. I think you got through the first half like I did. Probably did not win today. But regardless, Chiefs are not in first place, but they have a tough division. Both those teams are 4-2 coming into today. The Chiefs were 3-3. Chiefs are now 4-3. They're not even guaranteed to be hosting a first-round playoff game is the point that I'm getting at, and yet the market is like, this is a team that they have 50% better odds than – they're 5-1. The Bills are 7.5-1. The market agrees with you. It's not just that you're biased. That's what I'm trying to say. You asked me my opinion. You said I'm kind of biased on it. The market's seeing what we're seeing.
Well, the parity is fun. And the fact that some of the AFC leaders have encountered quite a bit of adversity and some of them have stumbled. The Chiefs looked invincible today, but they've already lost 3 games, including just recently to a Jaguars team that at one point I thought you were going to make a joke about the Jaguars having like flown back and forth to the West Coast like during this week, but it was about the Denver Broncos. So yeah, it is fun to see. I think the Colts story is one of the best in the NFL this year. And then it was a devastating loss for the Vikings against the Eagles. When you consider how close they were in that and just how good that division is, Caleb Williams looked really bad again today, and yet they have enough pieces in place and are playing enough questionable teams that they are also 4-2. They're right there. That NFC North with the Lions, the Packers, is really unfortunate for the Vikings because they do have one of the best rosters in football and haven't been able to get those close victories to keep pace with the rest of a very difficult division.
And speaking of the divisional stuff, something I have been wanting to circle back on. A couple weeks ago, I think it was after I came back from one of the early playoff games when I'd been drinking a little bit, you were telling me that the Ravens loss was basically catastrophic for them because of all the injuries and that the Steelers were going to run away with that division. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. You've proven very, very correct on that since. However, the Bengals going and getting that win on Thursday Night Football was massive because the Steelers would have went to 5-1 and the Bengals are actually closest to them in the division. They fell to 4-2 instead. The Bengals moved to 3-4. Ravens coming out of a bye, presumably with Lamar Jackson back. They're 1-5. They have a lot of work to do, but the Steelers threatened to completely run away and hide, like you were saying. The fact that the Bengals were able to get that win, it's really pretty hilarious. The Bengals are in second place at 3-4 and now have that win. They get the Jets and Bears at home. They get a bye week, and then they're at the Steelers coming out of a bye when they have to go to Pittsburgh. If they can somehow win also, in Pittsburgh and get the tiebreaker on Pittsburgh, Joe Flacco leading the Bengals to the playoffs would be so funny.
Well, a couple of years ago, he was completely unable to do for the Colts what Daniel Jones is doing last year midseason. This year, he went out and threw passes on almost every play, and that didn't work out that well. I don't think this is any up in the air for anyone, but Joe Flacco would tell you that throwing the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is a little bit different than throwing it to Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman.
And Jamar Chase is I love Joe Burrow, but Joe Flacco just throws the ball to me every single time. And it's pretty neat. I'm pretty excited about getting 23 targets in my second game with the dude. That was absurd on Thursday Night Football. I was like peak Brandon Marshall days where it's just like, all right, I guess we're just going to catch every single pass. And Jamar Chase is going to go he looked like a mild bust for a while there. He's going to start having 15 catch games every week. He's going to be the 101 again pretty darn quick.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago when I did the Dynasty 100, I had Puka at 2 and Jamar Chase at 3. And, a big chunk of the reasoning for that was that Nakua was going to do more for you this season. Well, that has very swiftly turned out to not be the case.
That one has flipped. On Rice, you were saying he didn't play a ton. He got 10 targets. You're thinking he's going to get a ton of work going forward, correct?
I think so. And you could see in the first, so the second touchdown was a little bit more of a, very nice throw, nice route, what have you. The first one is obviously a manufactured play. They actually were going to get him the second touchdown earlier, but they ran their gadget play sort of incorrectly, cheated on us. That play got blown dead. One of the things that you could see with him is that he gives them that physical run after the catch element where you can manufacture these plays. And one of the problems they have is that their running game is so bad. And even though they're not pure runs, the Rashard Smith plays today, I think quietly were the most important plays in the game for the Chiefs. And if you're doing that at the same time that you have Rashee Rice out there where you can throw the short pass. The other thing, people talk about him being the zone beater all the time. There was a play, I don't even think he got the ball on this route, or one where he runs the sort of short option route. He runs out, he's in a spot, he cuts one direction for a split second, and the defender reacts with him. He goes the other way so quickly that he and the defender completely switch places. And at no point, except for when they actually crossed bodies, was the defender within like 5 yards from him. That's the kind of deal where, having that option for Patrick Mahomes on top of everything else that they're doing. The thing again that was just so obvious today is that Hollywood Brown and Tyquan Thornton are going to catch long passes in this offense now because you simply can't take everything away. But the physical nature of Rashee Rice is so different from what they have. Travis Kelce is no longer remotely a physical threat. Their running backs are simply bad. To have a short area physical presence who has speed as well. Rashee Rice has elite speed. It's a huge difference. Yeah. It's a huge deal.
I thought that was
they wanted to make a statement today, so I don't know there's going to be as much kind of design for him in the future. But yeah, the volume is going to be huge. We were doing our rankings this week, the sheet that Blair sent to me, because he hasn't been playing, didn't have the game level similarity projections that we put out. Anybody who's interested, Blair does this fantastic article at the end of every week where he combines his advanced stat wrong read write-up with the game level similarity projections write-up and does weekly rankings for people. That's 3 awesome pieces kind of all jammed into one. Rice wasn't in there in part because he hasn't been playing, and so I went ahead and inserted him at number 5 for the week, having not played yet. And at one point I was thinking it was a little bit silly because he obviously wasn't going to get much in the way of vertical opportunities, and he wasn't playing a lot. But in the end, the 10 targets, the 2 touchdowns, you can see how this is all going to happen. And when you contrast that with the other receivers who are out there, there are a lot of guys right now who can score, but even someone like a Jordan Addison, in a given week, the volume could potentially not be there. I'm kind of wrapping back around to our start. It's interesting that you and I had this discussion like 10 minutes before the games today, as we're like, these are our toughest choices across all our lineups. The projections for Jordan Addison are really low. We think the projections are completely wrong. We're going to go ahead and stick him in all these lineups. But when you think through the rankings for everybody, Rashee Rice, the way that the Chiefs season has developed, and as limited as Xavier Worthy still is, right? There was a play in this game where he makes a nice catch. He didn't end up with a good line at all. But he did have the one where I mentioned he had the ball bounce off his chest, should have been a touchdown. He also had one where not really open. Patrick Mahomes throws the ball up to him. He makes a great play on the ball. Xavier Worthy is kind of a weird receiver where he doesn't necessarily have great hands, and yet every once in a while he makes great plays on the ball. During the preseason, Ben, there was this, I'm certain that everyone else in the world saw it because somehow I saw it, a play circulated on social media where he didn't play because it was raining, but in the warm-ups, he ran 20 yards down the field. He goes up just with the one hand and catches it back over his head behind him. And those are the kinds of things these receivers can mostly all do when you're going against air. But he makes that catch and then goes out for a bit because his shoulder has been tweaked. And again, just a reminder that, he's not anything like what he was going to be.
Yeah, he's he looked good though, as you said. Your notes on Rice, I had written very, very similarly. My little bullet point on him was that he had the big red zone role, sort of the main signal thing for me from this first game. Obviously, the 10 targets as well, but I also wrote that it's probably going to be the case, but it also seemed to be the fun new thing to feature, like you said, sort of a statement element. It'll be interesting to see how big of a target share he has. He's gonna have production, but how massive that production is just because of this element where when he and Worthy are on the field together, it does seem like they can get to everyone. They get the ball to Juju a few times in this game. You mentioned Taekwon has the 39-yard catch. Hollywood Brown gets a TD. I think you said Taekwon and Hollywood were going to catch balls downfield. I mean, Travis Kelce's corpse made it all the way down the field for the long catch of the game, a 44-yard reception. He was moving slower than molasses, but somehow just wide open. 44-yard gain for him. Everyone's going to be open in this offense. But no, I agree with you about the Brashard Smith thing as well. I wanted to comment on that. That looked like a really important, fun part of the offense. And lest anyone think that we're just talking about the guys we like, I mean, he was second on the team with 5 targets, and then Worthy was next with 4, him and Hollywood Brown. Stuff was spread around. Travis Kelce wound up with 3, Juju had 3, Taekwon had 2, Pacheco had 2, Noah Gray had 1, Smith had 5, and obviously Rashee Rice was the lead with 10, as we said. But
and again, just in terms of the order of things, the really inefficient rushing line happened in garbage time. These receptions were part of blowing the game open.
That's right. That is, yeah, and you felt that for sure. Man, we've been going for an hour and a half. We could talk about a bunch more games. What games did you want to? Before we came on, I asked what games had you not watched. You mentioned that you're morally opposed to the London game, and what did you say about the Cleveland Jets? The Carolina Jets game. You said something like, "I haven't yet watched the Carolina Jets thing," and I was like, "That's exactly what to call it. It's just a thing that happened, whatever that was." So we haven't seen that one.
Am I also thinking about it correctly that a week ago the Carolina Panthers defeated the Dallas Cowboys?
That sounds made up. They're 4-3. They've now won 3 straight games by 1 score. I can't with the 4-3 thing. You mentioned it to me last week where I had called them the worst team in football, and then they had gotten to 3-3, and now this is a 4-3. This is the most fraudulent 4-3 football team in the history of football, which is probably not true, but
they've won 4 out of 5 and beat the Atlanta Falcons 30-0.
And it's all make believe. No, you know what's not make believe about it is that they've got some playmakers on defense. J.C. Horn had 2 picks today, and they were both sick. He plays the ball really well. Former top 10 overall pick. Against the Falcons, they had the pick 6 on the guy who broke down on the Bijan Robinson check down. Can't remember who had that play, but that was part of why they dominated that game. Was a really good defensive play as well. Good read. Really bad throw by Michael Penix. Bad decision. But yeah, part of it is they're playing fun defense at times. J.C. Horn also had the one-handed interception back in week 1 against the Jags. They were trying to throw to Travis Hunter. He's had some sweet plays on the ball this year now. So anyway, they got that going for him. But Patriots, Titans, any thoughts? Browns, Dolphins, a lot of wind there. Any thoughts?
Well, this is another one where you want to, not that anybody has too many options. You either have Quinshon Judkins or you don't. Lots of other different types of formats you might be playing. Don't look at his 3.4 yards per carry and feel like that's particularly representative. They had him tote the ball 25 times. Many of them very clearly were just going to be handoffs to him. He has a 46-yard touchdown early. He scores 3 times. People are probably just going to look at the 3 touchdowns, but don't look at the 3.4 yards per carry. He was much better than that. The only other part of it was that, Fannin was the one person they threw the ball to some sort of as expected. His line ends up being pretty disappointing, but if the Dolphins hadn't been so catastrophically bad. This was a weird one where, I mean, you can't be as critical when you're already blown out, because partly it's just the competitiveness of still trying to do interesting things. But this game devolved in some ways even further than the Raiders game, where Tua and Quinn Ewers looked like they were trying to throw interceptions on almost every time they released the ball. Tua throws 3. Ewers has a pass where I believe 2 or 3 Cleveland guys knocked each other out of the way. It was a rough showing here, and this
they combined for 5 fumbles as well. Tua had 3 fumbles, and Quinn Ewers managed to fumble twice in the brief time that he played.
Yeah, this is one where do you assume that by the time people are listening to this that Mike McDaniel will no longer be the head coach?
I mean, probably, and it's sort of silly, as we've talked about, but this game was so bad. I don't know what you do. I mean, it's probably just best for everybody at this point.
We knew the weather was going to be a problem, but this game featured a quarterback with a 23.5 QBR who won by 25 points.
Malik Washington led the team with 8 targets. I have been basically cutting him after, constantly talking about him. 8 targets, 5 catches. Nothing was good about Miami's offense. Maybe that was just weather related. Darren Waller did leave early. It felt more like everything I thought might happen with Malik Washington I've been talking about, where it was like, oh, he's doing some of the Tyreek Hill stuff. He ran some of the vertical routes. It wasn't a ton of vertical stuff, but he did run like some out patterns down the field where like they motioned him into the route, like stuff that Tyreek does into certain spaces. Since Tyreek's gone down, basically all he's done is the manufactured touch stuff, the 4 touches or so that he gets every week anyway. There was actually some vertical routes and some targets downfield. It's not like he had a great line. It's not like it worked or, is something that I'm sure will be there, but I'm suddenly like mildly intrigued by Malik Washington again.
Well, they just don't have anybody to get the ball to. This is a game where Waddle draws the 4 targets, catches 1 pass. Washington does take a massive hit on one of his receptions,
but came back.
So if you assume they're going to be any passing volume the rest of the way, then he's an interesting one. I did just kind of want to ask you, we had referenced Olave. Olave, everything that happened for him in this game happened in very congested fashion. For the first quarter and a half, I thought he might put up a 0. For the next 7 plays, I thought he might put up a 200-yard, 3-touchdown game. And then he was equally uninvolved the rest of the way. It was a non-competitive game for the New Orleans Saints, but then I can't help almost falling in love with Spencer Rattler in these games because he's got some arm talent and he really competes. The entire roster is just not good enough. Kellen Moore, I think, didn't have a great coaching game in this one, at the same time that he is responsible for putting Rattler out there and giving them some opportunities to being competitive from a big picture perspective. I mean, this is a game. I mentioned some of these other QBR. Caleb Williams, a sub 20 QBR, is 15 for 26, not throwing the ball anywhere near his guys, has a pick. The fast start for Rome Odunze, certainly watching this game, you don't expect any of that to continue. Now, it's very apples and oranges, and the one guy is in year 2, is on a team that's 4-2, probably has one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL working with him, is surrounded by elite talent, and the other one plays for the Tennessee Titans. But there were times today where I was wondering, which one of these number 1 picks, when we think about, say, middle of next year or 2 years from now, who's going to be having the most trouble?
You're talking about Cam Ward and Caleb Williams there. Yeah, they won this game. This game sucked. The Bears ran the ball effectively. DeAndre Swift, 19 carries, 124 yards and a TD. Kyle Monangai, 13 carries, 81 yards and a TD. They combined for over 200 yards on 32 carries. That doesn't mean, running the football's the reason that it sucked or anything, but it just wasn't a very fun game. The Bears controlled the ball offensively early, and the Saints did nothing. Then the Saints scored right before half and then got ball first, I think, on the other side and scored again. And that was all the Olave stuff. It was there only 2 touchdowns. And on one of the drives, Olave caught a long pass to set up his TD. And that was all the Saints did, was this little, they call it whatever it is. I can't even remember what they call it, but the last few minutes of the first half, the first few minutes of the third quarter of the second half, middle 10 or whatever the heck they call it. And then they looked bad the whole rest of the game. The Bears just controlled the ball the rest of the game. I had some quotes from, I believe it was Daryl Johnston on the call that I'm going to put in stealing signals. You talked about a poor coaching game. The Saints, I took the Bears in over at stealing lines in this one, in part because the Saints had played back-to-back home games and also were home in weeks 1 and 2. So through 6 games, had only played 2 road games. And they got beat pretty bad in Seattle and in Buffalo on those 2. I mean, the Buffalo game was a little closer, but ended up losing by 12. This is only their 3rd road game, is the point that I'm getting at. 3rd one for Kelmore, 3rd one, with Spencer Rattler in there as as your quarterback and all of these things. And they look like a team on the road that didn't know what they were doing. But Johnson had a couple quotes. He said the early going, the operation just does not look clean for the Saints offense. Rattler was struggling. The protection was bad. They didn't look comfortable. A little while later, he said, it's been a disaster the last 4 plays for the Saints offense. That's just with no uncertain terms. But they had been bailed out by a roughing the passer. Very next play after he said that about the previous 4 plays, Rattler almost threw a pick. The ball bounced off both hands of a defender. And then the very next play after that, he did throw an actual pick. So that's like how the game was going in the early part of the game for the Saints.
He had some fun stuff on the call today. He was agitating for some rule changes like we like to do. He was told those rule changes were not going to happen. There was a 4th down in this game where the Bears go for it. And I believe Caleb Williams drops the snap. Regardless of what happened, they were not going to convert this 4th down. But they had also, and this is kind of one that was reminiscent of supposedly the issues they were having back in the preseason. They had made so many mistakes from I'd say bureaucratic, but from an alignment perspective, that this play didn't happen because of shenanigans. And so it was blown dead. Daryl wanted the play to count because you shouldn't be bailed out and get a field goal instead of losing possession of the ball because you did so many things wrong. Mike Pereira came back saying that wasn't going to make it very far up the chain in the rules committee because it just wasn't the play. But I'm sure if you polled the fans, like 99.9%, they're like 0.1% of Bears fans would be like, no, it just wasn't a play. But even you're going to get 49.9% of the Bears fans there, or you know what I'm saying, that doesn't make sense, but are going to be like, this play should cost us possession. It wasn't an extremely well played game, as you pointed out.
No, it was not. Only 172 passing yards from Caleb. You mentioned he did not have a very good game. Did you have anything on? I thought like Mike McCoy's first game or whatever. I mean, I've never been a Mike McCoy fan. It wasn't horrible from the perspective that he, early on got the ball to Gunnar Helm, then got it to Elageo Manor, then got it to Chimere DK, which like they seemed to really feature him throughout the game. He had a good game. Trying to get the rookies involved, trying to do some different things. They're still bad, the Titans, obviously, but felt like they didn't play as bad as usual. Patriots, you mentioned Ramondre Stevenson had a really good game, but I mean, I'm just annoyed that I don't know what's happening with Travion Henderson. His snap share had been a season low last week or tied a season low, but I had thought he looked pretty okay in that last game last week.
You could tell how excited they were to get to a period of the game where they could consider it pure garbage time so they could go to Terrell Jennings. I mean, that's how much they did not want TreVeyon Henderson to play at all in this game.
What? But that's the part of it I didn't get, because it got to pure garbage time. And if it's something where Henderson's not doing stuff right, he's not seeing the holes, he's not running the ball well, why wouldn't they give him the work late to get him some reps? Because they obviously still want to be a part of the offense. They didn't use Jennings at all earlier. He was clearly just a garbage time running back. They use Henderson in the flow of the game typically more than they did today. They didn't really at all today. It's like they were soft benching him. And yet when it got to garbage time, instead of being like, okay, you're the backup, go out there. Like, this reminded me a little bit of Trey Benson last year behind James Conner, where it's like James Conner's the vet. Trey Benson can't even really get on the field behind him. But when the Cardinals would blow a team out, they would let Trey Benson get some run and get some reps in. For whatever reason, the Patriots were like, no, we're going to go to the third guy who never plays on offense, is not a part of the offense at all, which it almost implies something favorable about Henderson. That's like, you're a part of the starters, and all the starters are on the bench now. Drake May's out of the game. Joshua Dobbs is in there. Stephon Diggs is out of the game. Ramondre Stevenson's out of the game. And Henderson, you're out of the game too. But then if he's a part of the starters, why doesn't he freaking play a little bit with the starters? Like that. It was just weird. How did he not get time on either end of that? Like, what are they doing?
The only thing I can figure is that on an otherwise well-coached team, because even if the schedule has been super easy, and even if Drake Maye is suddenly the platonic ideal of a QB, I mean, 21 for 23, 222 yards, deep balls dropped in to his guys like their handoffs. Just another, I mean, we talked about how beautiful his passing was last week. And then this week, it's just almost like, because you're playing the Titans doesn't matter. And yet,
don't forget
was immaculate again.
The 62 rush yards. Whenever he takes off, he does that like very downhill running. I love the way that he just picks up yards quick.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that goes. It is very much like the way you said it, where there's not, I mean, it's just downhill. So when he sees it, he does it. He doesn't seem, I mean, the flip side of that is just there's not a lot of shiftiness to it. He runs, gets the yards, and he gets down, which, I mean, smart. If you've got the golden arm, like, do not get yourself hurt. Yeah, well coached. Patriots look great. Maybe they like wrote down on a piece of paper jersey number the person who has already fumbled 15 million times this season, and they like got the 8 and the 2 wrong on the second number there. That's the only I mean, TreVeyon, just like RJ Harvey. I wrote him up this week in kind of breaking down a bunch of the different rosters, what you do with Malik Neighbors, what you do with Brock Bowers, what you do with Jerry Jeudy, and then certainly like kind of what we can expect from TreVeyon Henderson and RJ Harvey. The good news from that perspective was that the guys drafted approximately where they were drafted, who scored approximately like they've scored. Lots of names have blown up from this point in the season. This is another terrible data point for both guys, though. And every week that they are both not involved and play this poorly. I mean, this week they were involved less because they have played so poorly. So it's definitely not going in the right direction. Now, on the other side, it's interesting because sometimes you get these coaching changes and the coaches are just like, what we should do is try and lose by a little bit less and get a little bit of a moral victory and get a little bit of momentum just by keeping a game close. Cam Ward threw 34 times. They only have 11 carries to the running backs. Tyjae Spears actually looked pretty decent. I mean, obviously in a tiny sample. It was a little bit weird in that Spears is such a good receiver, but they threw Tony Pollard as many passes as they gave him carries. That part was interesting. Ward, he showed off that really big time arm talent early on that touchdown pass to DK. From that point on, he looked pretty scattered. We don't go into a ton of detailed sort of scouting observations on the QBs necessarily, but through the rest of the game, he liked someone who has crazy arm talent, but is going to need to be rebuilt from the ground up in terms of balance, technique. He made some other nice throws in the game, but he also made lots of throws where you have to be able to make that pass as an NFL QB. If you're the number 1 overall pick and you have this opportunity, the Patriots defense is not good. You just you've got to look more disciplined. And I was hoping to see a more developed product from him based on both the arm talent and the really impressive stats that he's put up the last couple of years in college.
That makes sense, Sean. I think we've gotten through all of the games that we've both seen. It is after midnight, my time, which makes it after 2 your time, if I'm not mistaken.
Late night stealing bananas. We'll all be rooting for everyone's teams tomorrow night. Ben, I haven't looked forward at the schedule. I am enjoying these. I'm not as morally opposed to Monday night double headers as the London game. Hopefully you have enough players left. We're also rooting for Ben Gretch's and the entire state of Washington's Seattle Mariners tomorrow night, which I guess means we're rooting against the Canadians. So any Canadian listeners.
That's easy.
That's easy. Okay. That's easy.
No, there's a lot of great Canadians that I know in the fantasy space, and I've had some reach out, and they're all so nice. And no, I really do like the Canadians, and I've had a couple of them say, "Hey, if you guys win, we'll be rooting for you in the World Series." I mean, I certainly don't want to see the Dodgers win again. So, if that's the way it goes, that the Mariners go out, I probably won't watch a lot of the World Series. I'll probably be pretty bummed out about baseball, but I would certainly be rooting for the Blue Jays as well. I think they're a fun team. I've always enjoyed watching the Blue Jays. But yeah, no, they must die.
There you go. Arguably the most fun team in the American League, certainly the second most fun after Ben's group there. Must die is the final call on late night stealing bananas. Good luck, everybody. We love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.